Alright, so this video is going to be on procedural generation workflows in Unreal Engine 4 in both foliage and grass. So I wanted to create a tutorial on this to basically document this workflow, since at the time, I think it was around June, that I was looking for some tutorials on how to do this type of generation. I couldn't find anything explaining how to do this particular workflow. So as you can see, here's a screenshot of my latest scene doing this workflow, and it's sort of like a Welsh Valley type thing. Now this is my first time ever doing like a video, so forgive me if it's a little choppy, but you're gonna have to open up an Unreal document. This is 4.11.2, I believe. Let me double check that. Yeah, and just as good to know in case some things got moved around. So the first thing you're gonna have to do is go into your edit preferences, and you have to go to experimental and enable procedural foliage. Set that as a default. That way you're able to get up the actions in order for you to be able to do this task. So what I'll be doing is importing a terrain I created from World Machine. Unfortunately, I can't really show you too much of it in World Machine since I'm having an issue right now with Geoglyph's quad spinner not syncing properly with World Machine, so it won't open up the document. However, that being said, alright, so once you get your terrain put in here, you're going to have to import your splat map that you should make. It's basically, in order to get this to work properly off of a big terrain like this, which I believe is 16 square kilometers, you're going to have to do some masking. And so that's what the splat map will enable me to do. Alright, so when you're in your material, obviously you're going to have to drag this in, and you're going to have to create a landscape layer coordinates. And since this is a 2048 terrain, it's going to be a 2033 mapping scale, and that was displayed here when I shrank it from 17 to 16. I don't remember what it was labeled as, but you can go back in the video and see it. Now you're going to have to create a landscape layer blend. And so I'm looking at my other monitor just to make sure I remember everything. And then you'll create a landscape grass output. And so this is just acts like another one of these type of outputs, and that's going to enable the foliage spawning. And to create the foliage spawn, you're also going to have to go into miscellaneous and create a landscape grass type. And for this purposes, I'm just going to use all default starter content, so that way everyone can follow along. Now this is going to tell it the density of spawning, and you'll go back in here and sync that to there. And then what you're going to want to do is, because I have a 3-channel splat map, I'm going to create 3 channels. They're all going to be height blended with a preview weight of 0.5. Let me full screen this for you guys. just gonna name it the corresponding colors. And then you're also, for this one tutorial, I'm also gonna show how you can mask out through painting your generated foliage. So, which is really cool. It gives you some customization for what you're trying to do. And that way you can really just set dress the scene a lot quicker and get the customization that you would normally get from hand painting a scene. So, and this one will be I believe it's just a white blend. Okay, so now preferably you'd have all your texture samples that you want. I'm just going to use default starter content, random stuff, just to show you how it works. There's no real need to do this yourself. I'm trying to get stuff that doesn't look too similar, you know? Okay, so once you have that, the way that the this landscape grass output works is that it reads white and black. So anything that's white is going to spawn foliage. Anything that's black is not going to spawn any foliage. So you'll be able to preview kind of how this goes as you go along to give you some more finessing. I'll show you. So as you can see here, the easiest way to okay, so disabling the coordinates really gives you the best visualization of exactly how it's going to place stuff in your scene. Alright, so then let's save it out and see if it spawned anything. It should work. So now we'll have to go here and assign the material and you can see that the foliage is being generated already, but right now it will generate the entire map because there is nothing restricting its spawn area. So it's the whole document that whole landscape layer blend that's going into the grass output is fully white. So we're not going to want that. We want to have a little bit of control as to what's happening. So I'm going to start building out some controls and explain what they do. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply this by a constant, and what this will allow me to do is I can convert this to a parameter, and it will control how it's basically like adding. It's basically just like adding white to the scene. So it's cool because it will add some control as to how dense the foliage spawning is within certain segments throughout the scene. And then you're going to want to clamp that. So let me try to go here and make it as easy to see what's going on as possible. So you can see here that it's gotten a lot brighter, so the foliage density is going to be a lot stronger. I'm going to clamp that now because I don't want it to be too messed up. And what I recommend doing after that is adding a cheap contrast, and what that will do is it can burn into black and white for you, so it's going to be the easiest visualizer, I don't know what word you want to use, just to see what's going on. It's the best way to see what's going on. Alright, now what you're going to want to do is, for example, my terrain, I didn't want, you know, the top of the mountains to have any foliage on it, you know, like normally there's like a tree line, for example, in a lot of mountainous areas. So for me to do that, I have taken from my splat map, if you see the red, so that's the top of that one peak I was just looking at, and so that's what's going to be subtracted. So to do that, I will take this and I will take my red channel, go into here, and you can see that it subtracted it out, and now there's no white there, so there's not going to be any spawning of foliage there. And then on top of that, actually I'll show you this first and then I'll show you another step after, just to see how it works. So let's save that out. Oh, and don't forget to reattach your landscape coordinates. Don't want to forget that in the future when the compiling takes forever. So now, as you can see, there's no chairs up here, but there's chairs down in the valley, which is what we want. Okay, so then on top of that, if you want to add paint controls, this is what you got to do after. So what you want to take is a landscape layer sample, which is basically just an array, and you're going to subtract again from your scene. So that's what you're doing, is you're removing it, the foliage from the scene that you don't want. So I'm going to name this, and it's corresponding. So this right here, this landscape layer weight, that array, is going to read this bottom layer blend that I added. So we can just call it ABC. And here you're gonna have to rename it the same thing since it reads off its title. And then you're gonna connect this to that output, and you're gonna save it out. And this is the part that was the most difficult now for me to figure out. It's really not intuitive whatsoever, and it's quite buggy, to be honest. So what you have to do is you have to go into your landscape tab and go into the paint tab, and you're going to wait for this thing to finish compiling. And now you're going to make all these, you're going to create all these layer infos and make them non-weight blending. Now this is very important. In order for the painting to work, you have to import a layer action. If you don't import a layer action, the painting will not work, and when you try to paint the entire tile block, as you can see here, all these different tile blocks, the entire tile block will just turn to black or whatever, and it's extremely annoying and stupid. So for me, the workaround is you have to import a layer action, and the best way to do it is where you don't want the foliage to go, import that alpha mask. So the red is where I don't want anything to be, and I created a specific red PNG, and it has to be, I believe it has to be a PNG when you save it out of Photoshop for this to be picked up as a layer action. So import the PNG, Yeah, I don't have the file size correctly, so it gives me that error, but it'll still work. It's clamped a little bit further down, but that's cool. And then what I did also as a workaround for this is I imported just a white blank document. This is helps control the blending a little bit. If you got multiple neural maps going up through your scene for each layer blend, you're gonna want to have masks so that way it doesn't have overlapping textures, and that way you get the texture assigned where you want specific. So I'll import white again. And for the ABC, which is the thing that we're going to use, the target layer that we're going to use to paint away the foliage, we don't have to import anything for that. So now you can just paint on top of it. You can see it's starting to go away. Let me move the tool strength to 1 so it's easiest to see. Boom. Look at that. So that allows you that type of painting fidelity that you want. If you hold down Shift and click again, you can paint it back in, which is awesome. And I will also go back in and show you kind of how that layer density works specifically. So that's at 6 right now. If I were to set this to 1, and the cool thing too about setting this to a parameter is the fact that you can go in real time and slide it, back and forth and see how well that density change is working for your foliage scene. It can get a little crazy if you explode the values, not just because of how much geometry is being spawned, but it can start screwing up the masking too, as the values just kind of get blown out. But give this a second. I'm looking at my notes. I'm kind of just freeballing this entire tutorial based off of my memory, so it's not ideal, but hey, now I know how to do it, right? Alright, so you can really see how the density went down by setting that down. So that's great if you're running. I forgot to turn that off. That's great if you run into issues with your FPS getting too low, and you need to problem solve a good way for creating better optimization. Alright, so now I'll take you into my actual Welsh Valley scene, so you kind of just get an even more comprehensive look at kind of what's going on. So let me turn on my grass and foliage, and let's get rid of these sprites, and let's get rid of these volumes. I can really show you how awesome this is of a tool to be using. So let's say I wanted to create a dirt path right here. So I grab my dirt layer and I just paint it in, right? And then I have to go here. Oops. Oh, wrong one. Boom. Got a nice dirt path like that. So it's awesome. So you can see that's what I did here. And I'll show you exactly what this material looks like. I'll kind of go and walk you through it. I wanted to create a material from scratch. I think that's just easier to follow along in tutorials rather than me just going node by node and explaining what each one does. But what these nodes set up here right now is an absolute world position. And the reason why I did that is because I also have some other meshes within my scene. For example, I have a rock and I wanted to have moss on it, but I wanted to, or grass, and I wanted the grass or moss that was on the terrain itself to seamlessly blend into the rock. So that's why it's awesome having this, so that way no matter where you move it in X and Y coordinates, it's always going to just tile itself seamlessly. From there, I have several different textures I'm doing. I also have a macro overlay, and that just adds some more fidelity with LODs and customization type stuff, which is cool. And down here, I just have some crazy normal map blending that I'm doing, so I can just kind of get some greater fidelity with the stuff I'm trying to do. There's no real reason to go over that. It's not what this tutorial is about. But yeah, let me see here. So if I were to remove this, really see just exactly what's going on. It's basically the same thing. Yep. Alright, now the last thing I wanted to go over is how to procedurally generate, trees or whatever. So to do that, you're going to have to create a procedural foliage spawner, and you're going to have to create a procedural and also create a foliage type. They're both under miscellaneous. Again, what I'm going to do is just take a basic mesh that you guys will have access to, so you can follow along. I like the quad pyramid, I don't know why. And then you're just going to assign that foliage right there, save that out, and now you're going to drag your procedural foliage spawner into the scene, and you're going to want to make sure that it covers the entire scene. Okay, so that should cover the entire scene. Awesome. Alright, so the way this works is that in here, under the foliage type, there's this little drop down right here under for placement, and there's one called landscape layers. And so what you need to do is, like that array before, is you have to name the landscape layer off of what you're trying to do. So let's say red, so that's what you'll put in there. You'll type it exactly the same way. Save that out. And the way that this reads is actually the exact opposite for clamping. So you know how before we had it so that all the foliage spawned down in the valley based off that white and black, it's going to spawn all the pyramid stuff at the top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, so you're going to, if you're going to try to do this, you're obviously going to have to create a target layer that's going to be specific just for foliage spawning. Alright, so now what I've done, so I'm just actually going to show you how it works properly. So what I've done under here for the green is, instead of having just that plain white, I imported a green blue. So it's the green blue individual channels of my splat map in a black and white image, so that way it will give us the same type of spawning as we got with the chairs, but now we're going to do it with the trees or whatever type thing. So what you're going to have to do is select your volume, the procedural volume, and then now everything's synced. So just click resimulate. And boom, there you go. So it simulates where you want in the proper area that you want, which is great. And I'm not going to go over the advantages of why you would use that tool, but I will link you to a video that goes over that. It's a actual Unreal help support or whatever doing it, and that's kind of where I got some of these ideas from to begin with. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, you know, leave a like, leave a comment. If you have any suggestions on how to do any of this stuff better or a different way, let me know. I may make another video or add annotations to the video on those suggestions. So yeah, have a good rest of your day. Peace. Also be sure to check out my website. It's going to be down in the description, SeanDavies3D.com. Yeah,